Good morning, everyone. My name is Farzaneh Bahrami. I'm from Laboratory of Urbanism, EPFL. I'm very glad to start the first part of the day here with three prominent practitioners who are also great educators and academics. We will listen to a short talk by each of them first, and then we will have a moment of exchange and debate, also open to your questions and comments. I'm going to do it to introduce them briefly, though I doubt its necessity given their reputation in the field. We start with Paola Viganò. She's architect and urbanist, laureate of Grand Prix d'Urbanisme in 2013. She's professor in urbanism here at EPFL and University of Venice, and among many other schools, she has taught also at Harvard Graduate School of Design. In 1990s, she co-founded the studio with Bernardo Secchi, and since then they have worked together on various projects, master plans, and urban visions. Working on different scales, their project Theater Plane and Spoornoord Park in Antwerp were successively selected as the best public space in Belgium in 2008 and 2009. She will be speaking here on evolving narratives on a project in Rennes, France, which is also the topic of her essay in Topics magazine. Paola.
So thank you very much. We have 15 minutes, so I will try to not to lose my time. So discussing with Matthew, and especially at the beginning, I think, of the construction of this symposium, there was a big emphasis on the theme of the ground and the narrative of the ground. Not so general as the narrative of the landscape, but really of the ground and of the soils. So reflecting on this theme, for me, was a way to go back to an experience that together with Bernardo Secchi we were dealing, and we are dealing. It's a project with a long already story. It started in 2003, and it concerns the center of the picture, so the area that you see with some industrial buildings, with some woods, forest, and a military area that is just in the middle of this site. So this is our test case, where in fact I very much insist on the descriptive capacity of design, how a project can be a tool of description, as well as a project as a tool to demonstrate something. So also as a moment of construction of an hypothesis and of a thesis, of a statement. And so this is our test case. This project is, again, as in the case of Georges Descombes yesterday evening, is a project made by a lot of people. Here only few of them are mentioned, but as being a project that started in 2003 and will probably go on until 2025, you can imagine, the crowds that are crossing. And this is also not the time needed to construct a project of this kind, is also a sort of a life in itself. And together with Bernardo Secchi and myself, Charles Dard, who is a landscape architect based in Paris, Pierre Bazaine, that is an ecologist, and of course civil engineers. But we have also experts in water management, and we have of course our client, that is this public society working in Rennes. The place you saw in the picture with such vegetation, important vegetation, is in fact, or was in fact, a military and industrial area, completely covered by roads, infrastructure, railways, buildings, something you see in this plan that we discovered, in fact, much later, our starting of the project, when we asked a historian to make a specific research to help us to understand this place. But this was not the first reading, going back to the documents. The first reading was a more experiential walking, so of course we had to know every small denivellation, every situation inside this place. And the small diagrams are simply representing this topological reading. This site has a wall around, and we decided not to demolish the wall. At the beginning, it was a difficult hypothesis to share with the Rhine population that was expecting the demolition of the wall as a first way to reconquer the area. It's an area of 115 hectares, and the program are about 4,500 housing, so about 12,000 people, and a lot of also jobs, a lot of offices, etc. And you see here, so the wall, a center. Topologically, there was something really in the middle that was geometrical and topological because it was a lower point. So you could feel to be at the center of this area. You see this cross as existing roads. So we decided that this topological center had to remain the center. So we decided to work on the existing roads. So a lot of economy of infrastructure that we made in this project by using already what was there. And then you see like platforms from where you can see the city that is slightly lower. So you have like big windows opening on the landscape. And now the picture is not very, very contrasted, but there are places where you are inside. You are inside the forest, you are inside walls, so you feel absolutely into something, and so on. So this kind of topological reading, coupled with the reading of the biotopes. And this map was a sort of foundation together with the topological reading, because we decided that the white areas are the areas where practically only concrete platforms were, or buildings, still buildings. All the other, the red is the highest, the richness, the most rich areas in terms of biodiversity, because also the army, soldiers like very much to be gardeners. We know they are very protective, in fact, with their gardens. And so there are magnificent trees inside this area. And then you see the yellow, etc. So we decided, in fact, to construct the urban project. I insist because here we are working on the soils, on the vegetation, and also on the new habitat for these thousands of new inhabitants. So we decided that the urban project had to be founded on this survey. So we decided, in fact, to use the white areas and then to construct a narrative of this new urban project together, and this is why I wrote in the article, a narrative that merged with the narrative of the landscape, that was, in fact, revealing the specificity of this area. And one theme that was proposed to the teams that we worked for a period with 2 other teams on this area before being selected was the theme of the coulée verte. Now I saw in the translation, Matthew, we had to be more precise. The coulée verte is not a green way. It's not a way. The coulée verte is a cast. It's like a metal cast. So the idea was of a green cast infiltrating. This was our interpretation. And not, for example, the idea that because there was a very important strip of wood, that would be a sort of a highway of a green space passing through the area. No, we decided really to work on this cast, green cast, by following the different situations, recognizing the different specificity, absorbing the variety of this place. And the point of variety is important because the park, we used the notion of park here. Yesterday, Georges Descombes was saying that he didn't like so much. But I think park has a certain dignity also as a concept. We use in a metaphorical sense a park in the sense of a federative concept among differences, that is able to absorb variety. Not always the urban project is able to absorb variety, differences, Often, the urban project follow a very simplified logic, a banalized logic of tissues, for example. So we decided to get out of this and to absorb this variety without denying it, even with the risk of an urban project was not so readable to many of the experts that were. So one of the critiques of this project is that this project is fragmentary. It's too fragmented. But for us, it was not fragmented. It was inside this green cast that was a public cast. It was a public space that was guaranteeing the continuity of the urban project. And you see it's made of pieces. Each of them define a specific relation with the soil, with the ground, and with the landscape, and propose a specific habitat. So the key word, if you want, of this project is really situations, based on the understanding of the different conditions, and based on the idea that the different types of habitat are made, yes, of built things, but objects, but also of the specific relations with the landscape. Then we had to test this green cast, and we started, in fact, with the most difficult part, a part in which no biotope existed. So, in fact, there was the theme evolving narrative, because here the theme is the reconstruction of nature. That is just sterile surfaces. And we had to, as much as possible, to reuse all the agglomerates coming from demolitions. There was pollution, of course, so we had to separate, but some of these materials had to be reused, so the invention of a new topography, the invention of a new habitat, of a new topology. But in fact, I have not the time to go into the detail, but there are part of this cast that already existed. They were just recognized and integrated in the project. So my first triptych is in fact the triptych of the reconstructed nature. And here it was very important, the legacy of functionalism. We are used today to criticize very strongly modern urbanism, and also the landscape, the idea of nature the modern urbanism proposed. But in fact, there are some lines of thought. If we took, for example, the Sweden school of the 30s, the people working on the public spaces in Stockholm in the 20s and in the 30s, they were really working very much on the reconstruction of nature. So what you see here is simply a new nature from these conglomerates. We decided to use very small amounts of topsoil in order not to bring topsoil from other places. So what you see here is really an effort of economy in which we try to construct a functional, ecologically functional environment where the water management and the cut and fill balance produced this environment. And also there are this multiplying the landscape. This is a very small, in fact, space, but multiplying it. And what we learn also from this legacy is that the way, when you reconstruct nature, anyway, you have to question yourselves about what kind of nature, what kind of aesthetics. And then finally, we got in a very fluid way to this idea that the reconstructed nature was the archetype. That was very evident. Poor soils, Brittany, well known for the rocks, this very poor nature. And we were working exactly with the same type of soils, with the same conditions. So what we were looking at were the Brittany school of paintings from Mr. Serusier paintings, in which this landscape is described very clearly as being poor, made of very small amount of fertile soil. And this is the landscape we wanted to do, as in Stockholm, in which the rocks and the wood were the archetype of the Swedish landscape. In our case is the different type of Geuze, I think the term, Adriaan, of the typical vegetation of the Brittany landscape. So the notion of archetype as a sort of minimal, again, or sort of conceptualizing the construction of this nature. The second triptych, and now I will go a little bit quicker, is about the grammar. Again, a grammar related to the archetype is in fact mainly the rock, that typical of this landscape. So schist, and used in different forms. So you have this very warm sort of carpet guiding through the neighborhood with an incredible beauty of these materials that are precious in a way, and they just define without other design, other layers of design, this place. The triptych 3 is a situation, a very specific one, in which you live inside a forest. You live inside a forest, there is a clearing, there was a clearing, and we decided to construct around the clearing a part of this housing. Maybe some one of you might imagine that these are very elitarian type of housing. They are not. The 50% of this housing is social housing. So, of course, here we are into a tradition of the REN administration, very oriented towards affordability and affordable housing. So, in fact, these are not houses for few, but for the normal type of population of the city. So, what is important by living in a forest that is in the city is also to imagine adequate type of infrastructures that are really conceived to be inside the forest, to maintain the clearing open, so without separations, and to make it a sort of collective and public space where everything was already there. In this case, the project is really the fine description of the landscape, differently from the first triptych, in which, in fact, it was the invention, the reconstruction of nature. But of course, even when you maintain everything, all the walls, the small walls in schist were there. I mean, everything was there, but then you have children that want to play. So then you work on the new topography, and you insert it just in this small room defined by the existing walls and the trees that are together with the walls. One of the reasons why we never touch the walls was exactly because close to the walls were the trees. So if you were touching the wall, you also miss then the trees. Triptych 4 is about the new continuities. So in this green cast, there are difficult points. And La Courouse is 15 minutes by feet from the central station of Rennes. So you're not far from the city. You can walk. It's a place where you should always walk and living without a car. And by going to the station, for example, you have to cross a viaduct. So you have difficult spaces which become, in our opinion, spaces of accumulation. We need people there. We need to bring activities. That's why we decided to put the space for the skater that is part of a parcours that is crossing the city with different episodes related to them. Yeah, you see the small model. Of course, this project being studied during years has produced tons of models and sketches and drawings. So this is just one to show you. You understand that inside this project, each small episode is a project. So it's like a mise en abîme of the project, in fact. And then the new appropriation of the area. Well, for me, this picture that is made by this photographer, Fabrizio Stipari, a photographer from Milan, is extraordinary because it shows a sort of contemporary warrior. The appropriation is really something which you have, you bring these new actors in places that would have never been there. But also, in this continuity, there is a small creek. So it's a creek inside the city. And then we need this, there is a topography that is very, very rich, and then we need different kind of path to go through the section that is quite complicated, and to make this space a space that can be used in the city. And along this creek, we discovered really years later, discussing with the historians, so looking at the documents, that in fact one of the quay that is the railway quay that is there, platform, was in fact the platform from where the last train bringing the last prisoners during the Second World War in Germany to the concentration camp left, the day after Rennes was liberated by the Allies. So this train that started from this place, and then he went, war was concluded, but the train was running, and thousands of people were on that train. So we are now discussing, we are now realizing a project for this space that is based on this assumption. There is no memory if you have no practices. Memory can only exist if someone is there and can bring that memory in the space. And memory is not just a memory, the direct memory of the survivals. The memory, of course, has to be a memory that can be transmitted. So this is why they decided to make a sort of a new coexistence of things, bringing again the skaters, bringing the family gardens, and also organizing this path along the stone wall. At the beginning, again, the reaction were a little bit difficult. Are we sure? Is it a lack of respect? No. We thought that that was not, that this, on the contrary, was the only way to have memory in this place. The triptych number 5 is a large tract of prairie, and there is also a new public transport, a bus in a separated lane that is crossing this prairie. And then you see the wall at the end, so there we open just a small passage, but we maintain this system that is made of walls and trees. You see the project is between two cities, in fact, Rennes and the smaller cities, that is Saint-Jacques-de-la-Lande, and then you see that the administrative border is in fact inside, crossing the prairie, and then you pass on the other side where you find another situation that is a very difficult exercise on mixing offices, housing, commerce, public spaces, small facilities. A very difficult exercise, I have to say, because we have missed our tolerance. We are not tolerant anymore, so we don't want anything together with anything. The truth is that notwithstanding the high criticism against the separation of function, we collectively want to be separated. So when you propose to get out of the image of the very sad office park that is completely not efficient in terms of energy, in terms of investment, etc., you see that there are some resistances. So in fact, we have to, again, to be educated, again, to mix and to consider things together. So the bus arriving, bicycle path on old rail tracks, and then this avenue using already an existing old roads. It's an avenue, but in fact, you feel more in the middle of the fields. And also the polluted ground that needs to be put somewhere, so we decided as much as possible to integrate also this part of the story. And then at the end of this office park, to get close to more forested area, we decided to construct this new hill that is in fact the way to solve the problem. But the hill is accessible, you can go upside, it's becoming a fantastic place where you can look from a higher point to the rest of the territory. So the demonstrative character of this project, I think, is really connected to the role of recycling, no? A theme that we are very much using in this moment. But recycling is really working on life cycles. I was quite... it was interesting to listen to Georges yesterday speaking so much about life. No? He was several times saying, we are bringing life. I don't know, but life is clearly coming back as a topic. So soil and life, of course, they match together. And to work on this kind of environment is not only an incredible exercise of description, but it's really putting a new position, is putting forward a new position, a new approach about the need of looking at the city in the terms of life cycles, superposing, opening, closing, and considering that our evolving narratives is our project that is evolving together with that. The landscape is used as a basis for the project, but at the same time it evolves together with the project. And this forms this evolving narrative. Thank you.
We started last night with the inspiring narrative of a project that is going on for almost a decade or more than a decade by Georges Descombes, that I would invite him to come here. Georges Descombes, he's a Swiss landscape architect from Geneva. He received his degree from University of Geneva and AA in London. He has taught at various institutions, including Harvard, Berkeley, and University of Geneva. Among his projects, Lancy Public Garden, I would call, not park, Geneva section of Swiss Path, extension of Geneva Airport, and the recent one, restoration or Renaturalization of the River Aire. Please, Georges Descombes.
Non, non, mais ça on va remettre que... Oh. Comme ça. Hello, good morning. I have a problem. I didn't think that I had to make a lecture. So I have no image. But I can start with some reflections, so it's not a problem. Paola, you said Georges does not like parks. It's not a problem of parks that I like or don't like. I said in the context of some topics we could discuss together. I mean, the use of landscape term is so invading, you know, that you don't know even never what is landscape exactly now. I mean, we talk about landscape. And I was yesterday at the beginning of the lecture. I'm sorry for the one who didn't see the images, but really I was confusing my role today. I was saying that I like the John Dixon Hunt triptych on three nature. Not because I think it's true, but it's a useful tool of selection or precision about the term landscape. He said there are three nature, you know that, but I just remembered. One nature is the world as a given, the tectonic, the erosion, the earth before the man appearance. And then there is a second nature, which is precisely the action or the result of the action of humanization of the landscape or of the earth. How said Jim Harrison, how the water goes is how the world is shaped. L'érosion. And then the man came and said the second nature is mainly agricultural activity, but also roads, bridges, Romanic, aqueduct, and so on. And of course today, towns. But the Renaissance term, to be rough, Some Italian theoretician said there is a third nature. And the third nature is a garden. The garden as a concentrated, reductive part of the world which interrogates, questions the relations between the second and the first nature. How we change the world, how we destroy it, we could say today. How we deal, how we care the world. So this idea of the garden for me, and John Dixon Hunt said landscape architects, they should never forget maybe that the paradigm of this garden must not be forgotten. You know, we are so much used. I remember the first time I saw Adriaan, it was in Architectural Association, Recovering Landscape Symposium. And Jim Corner was making a real shock in the audience because he was shaking the conservative British team of gardeners. You know, they said, "Oh no gardens. It's so conservative." It's true that if you go to the dentist, you have a lot of magazines with gardens, flowers, and it's ad nauseam concept. But I think nevertheless that if we take seriously the garden as a place of interrogation, I think we could start again. So it's what I was saying yesterday, the Aire River project, I would name it the Jardin de l'Aire, the river gardens, including the river and the promenade and a chain of gardens, a linear garden. And I said, you know, each one has a short life and you have to concentrate on a few topics if possible. And I liked the idea to finish as a gardener. As a landscape gardener, maybe. I mean, the term at the beginning, if I am not wrong, the British, maybe, I don't know, Kent said, or I don't know who invented the term, Kent or Capability Brown. They said, we are landscape gardeners. This, as an architect, I understand what is to make a garden. This I can understand. To make a landscape, that's another story. So I think the difference, the distinction between landscape and garden is a useful one. I know that we can read the landscape, we can interpret it, we can celebrate, but I think a civilization makes the landscape, not a profession. The landscape for me is on peut pas oublier, it's you can, comment on dit, tricher, you can cheat. You can cheat with the landscape, you know. When we see our landscape, we know how we deal with the second and first nature. So as professional, we can do something against this destruction, but it's very hard. I mean, most of the landscape architects I know make roundabouts, little things like this, but not landscape really. But maybe we can make garden, or let's say small amount of the landscape. Bon, ça c'était une première phrase pour participer à la confusion. Donc I don't say it's I don't like parks. It's I focus on garden, which is quite different. I said yesterday, maybe I can repeat it. Once Jane Jacobs said she does not like me, the suburb. It's not true. I mean, she does not like suburbs. So she said, I'm living in Toronto, in the city center, because it's very convenient. There's a bookstore, tobacco, cafe, and I come from my home, I go in the street, I find everything. So, but some are living in a suburb and they like it. And she reacted in an interview because someone went to Jane Jacob after her book and said, could you do something for the suburb? We need your help. And she said, no. I don't like suburbs. Don't ask me to better them. You should ask the ones who love suburbs to better them. You should always ask people who like something to make this thing better. You know, Le Corbusier was not very keen with La Rue Corridor, so he finished to destroy the city in a way. So you should take care of the people who does not like one thing and who want to better it. It's better to find someone who likes the thing and say, I would like it better. So parks are useful, Paola, I've seen your project, but there are so many people who do parks very well. For me, they have, if we want the garden as a point of reflection, of interrogation, following the triptych of Hunt. Parks are another story. They are like bicycle for me, or a kitchen, or okay. So we need parks. We have parks. They are active. In Paris, there are many parks. I've never seen one man reading in a park. Very few. But you have to be active. To play football, ball, play music, make. And a garden for me. Maybe I'm becoming very old, but I like the calm of a garden. For me, it's a moment of concentration. Alors, the problem is how to make a garden. I mean, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it exactly. So, is it possible to make a garden who can talk, who makes the people think about the relationship, what we do with industrial agriculture, what we do with the water? You were saying, Mathieu, about the situation, the global situation. We have Sébastien, who is teaching here about the dramatic situation. I mean, it's nanotechnology here, the kingdom of nanotechnology, and maybe nanotechnology is the most polluting devil. So on one hand, we better our river, and as I said yesterday, the river Aire looks, she is a virtual river, but inside. As long as we don't stop the pollution from the agriculture, industrial agriculture, my little river is a fake, is a virtual river. But my attitude is, if you go 1 millimeter right in the good direction, it's already something. You know, we have a short life, and I don't want to be a victim, or I would like to have a beautiful life. To believe that it's possible to return. I mean, I always thought of people like Václav Havel. They were in the 80s fighting the Russian system, and every specialist of politics say, no, you will never turn down the system. It will, because the Stasi, all this Putin before the, I mean, you know, everything is blocked. And one guy, a theater man, said no. And 10 years after, he was president of Czechoslovakia. So if these people in these conditions have done something, we are really in very easy condition, confrontation with their work. So parks is okay, and I'm very pleased that some other people do with that because they are useful, and there is no, it's like a brush dust. They are useful, but I don't fabricate brush. One thing is, I have 2 minutes, or it's about interdisciplinarity. We have Paola and myself yesterday I've told that we have a lot of people working on this kind of project. But on our particular, I was in the train with Adriaan today. We met in the train from Geneva and he asked me, how is your health? I said, much better, thank you. Because a year ago, when I was in Hanover, I didn't know yet with Annette, I was ill, but without knowing it, I got the Lyme disease, if you know what it is. It's these bloody little things you get when a tick beats you in the woods, in the grass, in the wetlands. It's I don't wish you the same. It's a bloody difficult illness to get rid of it. It destroys your nervous system. So when I was addressed to a doctor, a specialist, epidemiologist, a nice woman, she said, oh, Mr. Descombes, you get this, but we know the name of the illness, which is rare in the hospital. 50% they don't know why they died in terms of neurology. And she said, yeah, Borreliose, Lyme disease is a difficult illness, but I am worrying about other things. It's with the change of climate, we have no mosquito, tiger mosquito, invading south of Switzerland, Ticino. They have already these kind of little things which can be destroyed. And she told me, discussing with me, oh, I'm really worrying about this bloody fashion of wetlands. I said, oh, good, it's my profession. And she said, oh, okay, if you make a river, it's active, but the ponds, you know, every little village or villa is full of ponds for the children. And this is a question. So I said, and she told me, if you like, I come to your university. She thought I was still teaching. And I will make a lecture of this. And I work in Geneva with the Département de la Nature et des Paysages, a big 100 people working for the nature. But there is no doctor. There are no doctors in these teams. So interdisciplinary, I think we should include toxicology, maybe there is, but certainly doctors, because, you know, it's always the same. We are absolutely sure that we do the good. Mm-hmm. And we maybe are preparing the hell. So we should always be very careful in this interdisciplinary to have a question, someone who asks a question you don't think to ask yourself. The world is full of stories, narrative about the people who wanted to make the good, and it turns out, no, in terms of revolution, it's very obvious. But also, if you think about industrial agriculture after the Second World War, I'm sure it was so fantastic, this productivity, machine, paradise. Next lecture. And it turns hell. So nanotechnology, maybe, I don't know if I have the right to say that in the EPFL, the kingdom of nanotechnology, but maybe also the art of the hell, of a new hell that we didn't know, we don't know. The last word, it's about children playground. This, you know, I hate these children playgrounds. And for what? Of course, it's like park, maybe you need it. But we should question it. Because, again, with Adriaan, we were talking in the train. The psychoanalyst Winnicott said, you know, it's about the Freudian fort da. A little child throw a ball and then it's fort and da. This is a play, the essence of play, the imagination. I throw an object and then more or less hidden, and then... And Winnicott said, and it's very much linked with what I was trying to say yesterday about Peter Handke when he said something starts which was already there. This paradoxical sentence, something began which was already there. And Winnicott says the child creates something with something which was already created. He take a piece of this and he make a puppet. It's a creation, the puppet, but it's based on something already there. It does not create from nothing. It's like imagination, you know. Ludwig Hohl, another Swiss writer, said, imagination, it's not a creation like this. Creation of an object by a child is creation about something already there. It's transformation. And he said, Ludwig Hohl, imagination is not creative. It's creative in a way, it's an intensification. It's why we quote this in this newspaper. He said, you must, imagination is just a way or a manner to elevate the temperature of the existing things, to put the fire to the landscape. That's my agenda, to the garden. So I'm very reluctant to this ready-made or prefabricated and also, maybe we need some swings. But you know, when also you see always the same, or with the soft caoutchouc land, soil, that when a child falls down, there is regulation, he must fall down from 3 meters high, he does not break, so okay, very good. And then he goes with his grandmother, he climbs in a tree, break his down because he thought the earth was a gently caoutchouc world. And are we stopping the creativity of the child when we do too much? It's exactly what, for me, I was saying to Adriaan, I love to see the children in my river. You know, they are, especially when they are 6, 7, you look at what they can do with a river and a stone. They touch, exactly what Freud said, choke, and the waves comes to him, choke. And their eyes, their face is so full of joy and of hopes. No, they didn't know yet that my little tack. The world is hard, you have to work. It's not a funny story. Boom, boom, boom. And they will become like us. And we should not help this process. And I think, you know, we have a fight about invasive plants in gardening. Huh? Each time we touch the soil, we plant before the invasive plant comes. So I use this concept of fighting the invasive plant with a precaution before. So I thought I'd put some kind of play field or some tricks for the children, some pits or something, just to oppose to the invasive field, ground field for children. So there is an invasion. I mean, invasive plants are okay, but invasive playground for children are, for me, maybe more dangerous. Last word is about the narrative of landscape. I mean, it's you are going to discuss this seriously, but I wanted to recall André Corbeau, who was really a master for us, for many of us, for me at least. And he talked 40 years ago about palimpsest. So he focused on this idea of the land as a layered soil, ground. But then he called it palimpsest about the book, the fold, you reuse, and there is something. But then he comes to the hypertext, saying the city or the territory is maybe a hypertext. And there is always text in it, hypertext, so we know more or less that you have nodes of information and a web. And I think the palimpsest was maybe a bit linear. I mean, it's still a link with the linearity of the narrative. And hypertext breaks the narrativity and introduces to maybe a more complex and open field. But maybe we have to invent, if hypertext is useful for us, maybe hypertopos, I don't know. Something which could say that. Or I was also about narrative, the linearity of narrativity. Maybe we should think about prose and poetic, because poetry is not linear. You can say, the grammar is more complex. Maybe in poetic time you can say rouge à la pomme. And if you say rouge à la pomme too, usually. So maybe the danger of, and the territory is full of story. I stop. The territory is full of story, of course. Story of the ingredient of the sun, the people who have lived there. But I'm not sure that to make a project, we have to make a narrative of the project. That for me, it's a question. I understand more or less what it is. It's, of course, every topos means something, but it's not very useful to build the project, an open project, which maybe we have to make the table or the page for the future story. And it's why memory for me is I'm very Proustian in that way. I think anything which is voluntary is limited. Everything which is from sensation coming to you, just like in the Proust, La Recherche du Temps Perdu, when he make a move on a piece of stone and tack, the past come to him. So is it possible in a project to make this moment of sensation who are so intense that the memory comes, and it's not the other way. It's not, this bloody circuit touristique, Jeanne d'Arc meets Ludwig II here. This is, for me, not an active or creative use of what we call memory. Bon, excusez-moi, je n'avais pas préparé de diapositive, mais on n'est pas obligé d'avoir toujours des images narratives.